Hello everybody, welcome back to Forza Horizon 5, and it has been quite a few series, I believe 11 of them now as of recording this. Now series is the monthly update. It's been almost a year since this game has come out, and if you recall, within the first month, I did a challenge where I got a bunch of different vehicles, 20 of them, from all walks of life, some race cars, some drift cars, some supercars, and I put them head-to-head on a custom circuit that I designed. And I want to do that again, with all new vehicles that have been added. Now our leader is the X5M Forza Edition, the nearly 2,000 horsepower SUV that isn't an SUV, that's totally overpowered and makes everything else look slow. I'm doubting that we're gonna beat that, but I'm still curious as to how these new vehicles will fare. We're gonna start things off nice and slow. We're going to be doing this in reverse PI order, so the slowest cars will go first, and then we get faster and faster as we progress. And we start out with the Ford Escort Mexico, specifically the London to Mexico rally car. Now the London to Mexico rally is an insane beast. Over 16,000 miles, multiple continents, much less countries. It's probably one of the most insane endurance rallies the world has ever devised. And this sucker won it by finishing. It's not the fastest. In fact, it has very old rally tires, and they're not very big tires at that. It has about 200 horsepower, and sure, it's light, but given the massive cow catcher on the front and the full roll cage, it's not as light as other Mexicos, where the period you see it gets a little bit sideways there. So this is definitely not going to be setting any records, but I think it's going to be a good baseline. We're going to have a timer at the, or not a timer, but a time at the bottom of the screen when we're finished. And this is going to serve as our baseline for the day, so we can just see who's going to go faster and faster. Obviously this is the fastest time of the day so far, because it's the first. But I don't expect it to last very long. You see, it really doesn't have that mid to high speed grip. It doesn't have any aero, it doesn't have any aerodynamics at all, really. It's quite the opposite. It has a massive plate in front of it. But at the end of the day, it is across the line not a bad time given the vehicle that we have here and just how old it is. Now next up is another end of the spectrum. We go from a 60s rally car to a 30s Indy car, the Maserati 8CTF. This won the Indy 500 twice, actually. And, well, it's a bit of a handful, very powerful, but also very sideways, as you can see, really struggling to keep it on the road with that massive amount of power going through the rear wheels, and those are not modern-day racing slicks. Those are old-school cross-plies that look like they're smaller than a bicycle tire. Big oversteer, you really gotta saw at that wheel just to keep it in a straight line. So this is definitely going to have the speed advantage over that Escort. But the question is, does it really have the grip? No, but I think it's just so much faster and so much lighter that the lack of grip, provided you keep it on the road and not in a barrier, means that it will be faster. Because just down this turn, you can see how much faster it is. It just takes off like a rocket. I love to see this vehicle in Horizon 5. We need more open-wheelers in Horizon 5. I'm just saying, turn 10, we could always use, maybe not quite a Formula 1 car, that would sort of break the game, but more cars in a similar manner to this. Anyway, though, the Maserati has one more corner to go, a little bit of a dab on the brakes just to make sure it gets it clean without hitting the wall, a little bit of oversteer just about keeps it clean, and we are across the line for the classic Indy car. And now we go a completely different direction once again with the road legal Mini Cooper John Cooper Works Grand Prix. I love this thing. It's our first front-wheel drive vehicle, so again, in terms of road cars, it's going to be well off the pace, but the hardcore Mini is a favorite of mine. I love the Cooper Works JCWs, and yeah, it's a fantastic looking car. It's very aggressive. And it's pretty quick for a front-wheel drive car. It's not exactly a Type R, let's put it that way. But for a Mini, it's pretty damn rapid. And I was expecting a lot more torques here with this vehicle. And sure, there is definitely some, you can sort of see it. There was a little bit of a differential one-tire fire on the exit. But front-wheel drive, 300 horsepower, and lots of aero and suspension trickery. This is a genuinely quick car. I did not expect it to be this good. It's still going to be well off the pace of other road cars that will show up today, if nothing else just because of front-wheel drive and lack of power. But for what it is, our first front-wheel drive car ever to go around the circuit, I don't think it's a disappointment. It carries pretty good speed, and it's got a decent acceleration on the way out. I also love the Union Jack taillights, just as we're looking at it for a second. Really nice attention to detail. Some will find it cringy, I find it really tasteful, given the significance of the Mini in Britain, but it is across the line for the front-wheel drive Mini touring car, but road legal. We do have a SEMA build next from Chris Forsberg once again. This is the Nissan 370Z Safari Rally version. So they took a normal 370Z and made it look more like the 1970 Datsun 240 that won the Safari Rally. Now that means that while it looks the part, it doesn't really go the part. It is a bit lighter, not exceptionally, and it is under the skin just a base model 370Z, so it's not going to be shattering any records, but I love the look of the thing. It's all aesthetics on this one. I think it looks fantastic. The weird light bar with the light off to the driver's side, so just being asymmetrical. Yeah, asymmetrical. It's a little weird, the front end, but otherwise I think it looks fantastic. It's a great homage. And the 370Z is still a pretty quick car, and this has some better suspension, full roll cage, so it's not a completely stock 370Z, but it's not exactly a Nismo, we'll put it that way. So yeah, this is an interesting one. It's not really designed for racing. I mean, it can go rallying if it so chooses, but it's more of a show car. But it's also not really fast enough for this challenge, and it's not good enough for the road. But it's across the line with a half-decent time. But the newest vehicles added to Forza are the Extreme E vehicles. Now, in Forza, they're actually called by their team names with the vehicle number, which gets really confusing really fast, and it gets really long to put into a tag for the bottom of the video. So instead, we're going to go by the actual name that Extreme E calls these vehicles, the Odyssey 21, because they're 2021 vehicles. I don't know where they got the Odyssey from, but regardless, they are all-wheel drive, all-electric raid trucks, basically. I know that's electric, but whatever. They're Dakar vehicles, essentially, for rallycross. It's a very interesting sport. I'm not really sure it's the best way to bring awareness to climate change, having a bunch of massive off-road trucks race around endangered wildlife zones, but they actually race each other. It's not a time trial, it's not a endurance rally. They actually go wheel to wheel, very similar to rallycross. So the vehicles are pretty quick. They are very quick, and of course they have that electric power out of the corners, but they are very heavy, so that does affect them, and they could really use some aerodynamic aid if they want to get a better lap time. It's not bad. It's not going to win as it crosses the line, but for the size and the weight and the lack of aero, it's not bad. And an interesting addition to Forza. This is not new school. This is very old school. So old it never actually got to race. I'm talking about the Jaguar XJR3. This was designed to race the 1966 24 Hours of Le Mans, but I believe because I want to say it was an accident, I don't remember exactly 100%, but I think it was an accident that put it out of the competition before it could even race. They finally restored it and brought it back into fully working order a few years ago after being locked in a shed for the longest time, and it's a very impressive vehicle. In 1966, would it have been the Ferrari P3 or the Ford GT40? Probably not, but for racing the Porsche 906, it would have given a good shot, and certainly of those vehicles, I think this is actually the best looking. I love the Ferrari P3, but the XJR3 is just on a different level. It looks so good, and it is pretty quick. Sure, it's got the cross-fly tires, but it's very light. It's a very powerful engine, so it's got a good power-weight ratio, And at the end of the day, it is a mid-engine rear-wheel drive Le Mans car. Even if it is from the 60s, it's still going to be pretty good handling. And yeah, this is a very nice car to drive. One of my favorites to drive of this entire day, actually, because it's a bit challenging, got a bit of oversteer, but not dangerous to drive. So it is across the line, a nice and respectable fastest time of the day. But I'm not expecting that time to last very long. This is the KTM Crossbow GT4 Endurance Racer. These race in the European Le Mans series, like the GT4 class, most notably at the 24 Hours of Nürburgring, that's where I see these things the most. It doesn't have much power, in fact it's one of the lesser powerful vehicles here, certainly for its class, but it's grippy. In Horizon 4 it was practically OP grippy. In this game it's pretty similar. The grip levels are unreal with the racing slicks and the crazy aero and the lightweight. It's the KTM Crossbow road car is very grippy. This is on a whole nother level, and it makes up all of its time in the corners. It has no straight line speed. It's horrifically slow, but it can carry so much speed through the corners that not much else can touch it. You really have to go into like the top S2 class cars to find similar levels of grip. So it makes sense that this thing without much power is insanely fast simply by carrying the momentum. Like in this corner I bet you was going to go flat out. No, it had a little bit of a lift, I think. But yeah, no brakes, just a little lift if that. That is the speed of the KTM Expo GT4 across the line. To put that KTM in context, this Subaru Rallycross car has nearly double the power of that Crossbow. It has over double the torque, 600 horsepower, over 600 torque, all-wheel drive with crazy aero. This should be a seriously fast run. Of course, it's not going to be the fastest run, because while it does have all that going for it, it is still a rallycross car. It's designed to chuck it around dirt tracks very sideways. That's how you get speed, not slow, calculated turns on tarmac. That's not what this vehicle is designed for. So it is probably going to lose some time in the corners, definitely compared to the KTM. And it does have a very short ratio gearbox, which means it might actually top out. So the acceleration is fantastic. But the actual top end, which we'll see on this section here, and the straightaway towards the end, really will let it down a fair bit. So I'm curious to see if it will beat that KTM. We're gonna find out. It's pretty close actually, but I think the KTM is just edging it. Heading in here, does it have to lift? Yes, it does. It does not have the grip. It's a little bit sideways, heading towards the wall. Now you can get on that power, and it's slower than the KTM. That is the power of grip and handling. It's a fair bit slower, almost a second slower in fact. Just a reminder, this game does actually have road cars in it once in a while. This is our second road car of the day, which is kind of crazy. The Huracan Evo, this is the rear-wheel drive version, so it's got a lot of bits from the Huracan Performante, minus the ALA system, and it's rear-wheel drive, which is always great to see on a Lamborghini. You never get enough rear-wheel drive Lambos. This thing, well, it's not going to have the sheer pace of all these vehicles. I'm not expecting it to. But it is the most powerful car we've seen so far. Actually, more powerful than even the Rallycross car. Which is a pretty impressive statement, but you can see it does not have the same ability to put that power down. It gets a bit of wheel spin because it's rear-wheel drive. I wanted to use the rear-wheel drive version instead of the all-wheel drive version. Get a little bit of variety in here. Show off what Lamborghini's rear-wheel drive tech can do. And yeah, it's going to be very fast on the straights and sound good while doing it, but it's not going to have the grip of the KTM or the acceleration of the Rallycross car, so it is going to struggle. The question is, though, will that power be enough? It's not looking like it. Nope. It's a fair bit down. We're going to have a nice advantage here, but it's a little sideways coming out of the final corner, and yeah, it's a second down on that KTM. Not all that surprising, to be honest. Not all that surprising. So if you're going to want a road car to beat the KTM, you're going to have to go to Lamborghini's parent company, Volkswagen. Specifically, the Porsche 911 GT3. This is the new one, the 992. Sadly, we do not have the GT3 RS. That thing is a monster when they unveiled it a few weeks ago. That being said, the normal GT3 is still fantastic, the wishbone suspension up front, the swan neck rear wing at the back, and 500 horsepower. It's a GT3, it's going to be fantastic to drive, and it is. I love the 2019 GT3 RS, how it handled in Forza. This might actually be better, which is an amazing statement, but the GT3 is, well, and I love GT3, it's fantastic, it's always fantastic. I don't think they've ever missed the mark on that, apart from when their engines exploded a few years ago. The GT3 is flying. If you're going to have a road car beat that KTM, this is probably one of the few still in S1 class. It's a monster of mechanical engineering, I would say. It's not the fastest in the start line, it's not the best accelerator, it doesn't have the most power, but it's just a damn well-engineered vehicle. And that's why it crosses a line half a second faster over that. Nicely done. Nicely done. Yes, a well-deserved burnout for the GT3. Bringing the opposite of the GT3 with the Copo Camaro. This is a dragster. The fact that it's even in Forza with the skinny tires and the parachute, albeit not functioning, is amazing. I never thought they would add a NHRA spec dragster to this game because it goes completely against the philosophy of corners. And yeah, it's terrible in the corners. It's not a very good car. So sure, it has 1100 horsepower, but it has no brakes of any kind and no front end grip of any kind, which makes it a very unique driving experience. I love how this thing driving is so different than everything else. It's a pain to drive, but I just love that it's in Forza, again, adding the variety of vehicles. That is what Forza is all about. And you know what, it is very fast accelerating, I'd say that with a certainty. 3-speed drag gearbox with, well, hilarious balloon tires on the back, and again, 1100 horsepower means you need to brake very early, because you're going 140 into these corners, and you have to brake half a mile before the corner, pretty much. At least that's what it feels like. Certainly, after driving the GT3, this is many seconds slower. Yeah, the GT3's already done now. But it kept it clean, kept it just out of the wall, which meant it did actually cross the line with a clean time, which is a win in amongst itself for the crazy NHRA dragster. But now we're starting to get into the crazy cars, starting out relatively tamely by comparison. The Schuckman 962CR, basically one of 3 efforts to make a Porsche 962 Group C car road legal. We had the Dower 962 that actually won Le Mans in '94. We have the Koenig 962, and we have this. This was the second least successful, or second most, depending on if your glass half empty or half full. And they only made about 3 of these, I think, which is one more than Koenig managed, so I guess that's an accomplishment. Yeah, it's not very well known, which is a shame because it's a mental-looking car. The fact this passed any road statue is hilarious. I don't know how it met the pedestrian safety laws. It probably didn't. It's probably importable under the show and display. But yeah, 600 horsepower, lightweight, not quite a Group C car underneath. They had to do a lot of tweaks to make this thing actually work for the road, but at least looks the part. And I guess for these vehicles, it's kind of all that matters, since you're not really going to be racing one of 3 ever built on the road. But now, it is across the line. And now we have almost a little mini shootout built out of GT cars and track specials. Starting out with the Mosler MT900S GT3 car. That Porsche's time was very good, but I'm expecting it to fall dramatically. These are now S2 class cars. This has just 520 horsepower, so it only has 20 more horsepower than the GT3, but it's a full GT3 car, like legit. It's not road legal at all. It's got full aero, racing slicks, the whole shebang, and it's very light. The Mosler MT900S was very fast. It is a very fast car. This is also very fast. The grip levels are insane in this vehicle. It doesn't have the acceleration, some of these vehicles that we'll see later on, but it is, it'll get the job done, that is for sure, and the carrying the speed, that is what these cars It looks like it's very close to the wall. I think he slightly scraped the paint off. That was very close, maximizing every inch of the road flat out through the final corner. It is across the line for the MT900 GT3 car. And next up in this mini shootout is the 488. It's not the GTLM car that raced at Le Mans. No, this is part of its One Make Racing Series, the 488 Challenge Cup. This is the Corsa Cliente version, so you buy this from Ferrari, and that gives you access to their One Make Racing Series, and that's used as a spotter place for other teams, primarily Ferrari, in the GTLM field and their GT3 and etc, etc. So this is sort of, think of it like a much faster Carrera Cup, essentially. More Lamborghini Super Trofeo in that vein. I'm curious if this will beat the Mosler. It's pretty similar in specs. It's a little more powerful. It's a little heavier, though, and it's got similar arrows. So this might be very, very close. I'm curious if the Ferrari will be able to beat the American Mosler. It's carrying a lot of speed, brakes very late heading into the corner. Doesn't get quite as close. It still gets very close to the wall. Not as close as the Mosler, but still very close to the wall. Final corner once again, carrying mega speed through there. Is it enough? Is it enough? No, it's just a few tenths shy. Very close for the Ferrari. The GT party is getting slightly spoiled by Vongren Jr. because we've got an SUV showing up. Admittedly, it is a 7-motor, all-wheel drive, 1400 horsepower electric drift car SUV, but it's still technically an SUV, kind of, in like a super silhouette sort of way. Yeah, this thing's insane. The Mach-E 1400 is a beast! And this has actually been tuned for racing. You can tune it for drifting by putting in a rear-wheel drive or for, time trials and whatnot in the all-wheel drive mode. This is in the all-wheel drive with racing slicks, so it was tuned for the track. They want to give themselves the best possible chance, I guess. And 1400 horsepower all-wheel drive electric car should definitely do that with the body kit to match. Of course, it is at its heart a drift car, so it's not going to be as fast as some vehicles we will see later on. But I am still expecting it to beat the GT3 cars just by sheer acceleration at that rate. It won't carry the same speed, but it has 1400 horsepower. It almost doesn't matter. And it is still a pretty grippy vehicle, as you can see around that final corner. And it crosses the line. Yeah, it's faster. Yeah, it's faster. 55.9. Not bad. And we finish our GT car little shootout with the Koenigsegg CC GT. Bit of a tragic tale of this one. Designed for the GT1 class, the new GT1 class, not the 1990s one, for Le Mans. And right as they finished the car, the FIA changed the rules, which stated that you were not able to compete unless you made 500 cars per year. I don't think Koenigsegg has made 500 cars in their entire lifespan yet, so this was axed before it could even race, which is a shame because it's an insanely fast car. We've seen in Horizon 4 just how fast this sucker can be, and yeah, it's demonstrating that in Horizon 5. The Mach-E may be at the top of the table, but it's going to last all of one session because this Koenigsegg is on a mission. 600 horsepower, I think 680 actually, want to be precise, and insane levels of grip. If it had gotten a race, it probably would have demolished the Aston Martin DBR9 if it had the chance, but sadly it didn't. One more corner, we are across the line. Yeah, 52. Holy crap. Yeah, I beat it. The question is, though, will the Brabham BT62 be able to beat said Koenigsegg? Because this doesn't really follow any particular rules. It's just a track weapon. In fact, it's for Brabham's first car since they folded as a Formula 1 team in 1986, I believe. It's built by Jack Brabham's descendant. I think it's his son, to be precise. And yeah, it's a bit of a monster. 700 naturally aspirated horsepower, less than 3,000 pounds, and even more aero than the GT cars that we have seen so far. It's a bit of a beast. It has been detuned for GT2 class racing, But this is not that version. This is the unfiltered raw 62. And it's fast. It's flying up this course. Carries mega speed through there. Not as close as the previous GT cars. He played it a little safe while carrying that momentum. And the speed you can carry, that's just ludicrous speed through the corner. And he is across the line, absolutely destroys the Koenigsegg with ease. But we're now into the final three, and this is where stuff starts to go a little mad. The Sierra Alpha Pikes Peak Hill Climb car, well, I can't say a car, it's a cart, really. The aero kit is the size of the driver's cabin, and yet it still makes over 400 horsepower while weighing less than 1,500 pounds. It may not have the absolute best power-weight ratio, but it is certainly the lightest vehicle that we have ever run. And it is so fast accelerating, but it can carry the speed. It actually rivals the Copo Camaro in terms of acceleration. That is how insanely quick this thing can be. And it's only 70,000 credits. This is a 70,000 credit mid S2 class car, and it is on track to demolish that Brabham. Question is, though, will it run out of speed? Because, well, it has great acceleration and great cornering. It has no straight end. No top end, I should say. And it's going second. By a tenth of a second. That drag coefficient and lack of power letting it down a little bit. Our penultimate vehicle is much heavier than the Sierra, that is for sure. I think it might actually be twice the weight, if not a little bit more. But the Neo EP9 is a Chinese hypercar, or I should say track special, because it's not road legal, and it makes a lot of power, thousands of torque, thousands of foot-pounds of torque, over 1,500 horsepower. It's a bit of a beast. All-wheel drive electric hypercars always do very well. Heck, the Lotus Evija is the closest comparison we have right now. That is the production car road legal record holder right now. It did a 53.4. Let's see what the Neo, with its track-only nature, can do. The massive Venturi tunnels on the bottom, working well in these high-speed corners. Question is, will it be able to beat the Sierra? Will it be able to beat the Evija? I think it's got the Evija safely in its rearview mirror. The sheer grip this thing can have is insane. Will it be able to beat the Sierra, though? That is the question. We're running up to the line. Yes, it can, by half a second again. Ooh, that was a close one, though. For the sheer power difference, that's incredibly close. But our final vehicle is sort of like the X5M Forza Edition. It's a bit cheaty, I'll be honest, because it's not really real. It's more an imagination of what a future Indy car would look like. It's the Hot Wheels Back to the Blade. What it lacks in power, a measly 700 horsepower. It makes up for in insane grip and acceleration. This thing is borderline cheating. It's tied with the EP9 as S2 Class 998, but it's a lot lighter. And sure, doesn't have the same sheer speed and maybe even the acceleration, but the fact it just keeps going and grips up so well. It's a downright unfair car. It can actually drive upside down. People have built tracks for upside down driving with this sucker in it. It's a monstrous vehicle. It is flying around this course. It carries insane speed there. Nice and safe. Two wheels on the dirt just a little bit. One more corner to go. We are so far ahead of everybody else today. We're not going to beat the X5M. That's already across the line, and so is this. A 49.2. That is a hell of a showing from the Back to the Blade. And if we look at the final tallies for today, for both this episode and the previous, the X5M remains untouchable. Even the monstrous Back to the Blade was only able to muster 49.2 versus this 45.7. The Neo in a pretty distant third, of 51.7, but the 51s as a whole are pretty close with the Brabham and the Sierra all in the 51 with the Neo. Then we got the off the pace of everything else we've seen.